Hello and welcome to another Corec Group training video. I'm Fran Mullally and today I'm going to go through how to set up your Trimble access for fast static surveying. So this revolves around five different steps. So first step is that you set up a template on your controller to allow for fast static. This template can be reused with subsequent jobs after you have it set up the first time. And then also you need to set up the survey style. If you want, if you let us know, we can always email you these templates and survey styles so you don't have to make them yourself, and they can be just loaded into the system files of your Trimble access controller. Once we've set up the template and survey style, then we can start a survey. And then just the check step is just to make sure that your receiver is in fact logging the data before you actually leave the receiver in situ and maybe go to start another receiver. So generally with fast static, the way it works is you often have a primary station or primary receiver, and this would be corrected using Rhinex files from the VRS network. You can see the Trimble VRS network there on the right hand side. So what you're doing is you can download Rhinex data for time periods that overlap with your receiver when you were logging data, and then you use Trimble Business Center to post-process that data and to get your fast static results. The process in Trimble Business Center will not be covered in this video. It'll just be the process in Trimble Access. If you require the fast static processing in the Trimble Business Center, then just please again just contact Corec Group and I will happily forward you that video. Okay, so for this what I'm going to use is my Trimble Access emulator, but the steps will be the exact same in the versions of Trimble Access. Whether that will be the TSC7, TSC5, TDC600. The steps are actually also the same for TSC3s and previous and earlier versions of Access. Okay, so if I bring up my emulator, the first thing you may need to do is create a template. So what we normally do is when you are fast static surveying, you normally don't set a coordinate system like Irish Grid or ITM. Okay, we normally survey in a no projection, no datum, and then later on in Trimble Business Center you can apply the coordinate system you require, converting from lat long and ellipsoidal height. So first step is let's create a template. So I'm going to hit the three bars up the top left. I'm going to go into settings and templates. Now in my case I already have one here made, and as I say, if you just want a copy of this file, I'm happy to send it to you and it'll save you doing this. In your case you can hit new and you can create your new template here, and you can copy from any of the pre-existing templates. So we're just going to call this fast static surveying, and again as I said you can copy from any template you like, but it will be necessary to go into coordinate system here and select no projection, no datum. Okay, you can leave coordinates at ground and project height at 0. You're not going to be using geoid model, and store, and then accept and save, and then you will have a new template. In my case I'm not going to save here because I have, as they say, one I made earlier. Okay, so once you have that template made, then you go into Trimble Access like you normally would. You create your project folder, and then within your project folder you can create your job. So I'm going to say fast static. Okay, here you now pick your fast static template, and that sets no projection, no datum. You accept, and that's your job made. Okay, the next step of course is to actually start a survey, but to do that first you'll have defined your survey style correctly. To do that, three bars, settings, survey styles. Again I have one I made earlier. In your case you can say new, fast static, and it's going to be a GNSS type style. Enter and accept. Okay, then we're going to edit it. In my case again I've already made one, so I'm going to go back in here and just show you what that looks like. Okay, so the first thing is you can go into your rover options in your survey style and change the survey type from whatever the default is to fast static. As soon as you change your survey type to fast static, the screen will look like mine here. It'll remove some of the extra options that you might have when you're doing a VRS or an RTK survey style, and the screen will just look exactly like mine. So pick the antenna type you want to use. In my case it's R10-2. So I'm just going to select that too. If you have picked the wrong receiver, it will actually update it anyway once you try to start the survey and it makes the Bluetooth connection, and it will also update your survey style. Okay, measure 2. In the case, this is important actually, depending on how you're going to do it. Normally, as I said, you will have a primary station that you might leave log for a couple of hours to collect from the Ordnance Survey or the Trimble VRS stations with Rhinex data. And then you will be correcting the secondary stations, which will be observing data for a shorter period of time from the primary station once that's corrected from the Ordnance Survey or the Trimble Rhinex files in Trimble Business Center. Okay, so the reason I mention that is normally the rover are the secondary positions, and they run for a shorter period of time. When you are doing these, you can have these mounted either on a tripod, or if you have it on a survey pole with a bipod, then if that is the case, it's going to be measured to bottom of quick release if it's an R10 or R12, or bottom of antenna mount if it is an R8S or earlier. If you are having your secondary station, your rover if you like, set up on a tripod, then in the case of an R10 or R12, it's measured to the lever of the R10 extension. Just be aware as well that this is an extra piece of kit that you may need to make sure that you have it before you actually go out and do fast static surveying using a tripod. So that's the lever of the R10 extension. This is not the case if you're using an R8S or earlier receiver. Then it's going to be measured to the center of bumper. So let me just show you what that looks like. If I go in and I pick my R8S, you will pick center of bumper. So in this case, of course, you're pulling a tape to measure where it is from the nail head diagonally to the rubber band that goes around the center. In the case, as I say, of the R10 or the R12 units, you are picking the lever of R10 extension, which is an actual separate piece that you need that screws into the tri-bracket adjuster, and then in there screws in the R10 receiver. Okay, you can leave the antenna height blank and fill that in at the time of survey. Logging devices receiver. Okay, sometimes by default the logging device is set to the controller. Okay, we don't want this really, because if you do this, you have to leave your controller with your receiver while it's logging data. That's not something you can do it if you wish. However, just be aware, if you do want to log to the controller instead of the receiver, you will have to use a cable, because Bluetooth won't catch the fast static data quick enough, so you have to use the cable. In this case, we're going to say receiver, and I usually pick a logging interval of 5 seconds. If you prefer, you can pick a lower logging interval. Just make sure that whatever logging interval you pick for the rover overlaps with the base. So if it's 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 15 seconds, that you have that kind of overlap. Just be aware, again, is something I go through in my other video, if you have picked a lower logging interval of 1 second, you can in Trimble Business Center filter that to be a 5 second logging interval. So I'm just going to say 5 seconds for my rover, and everything else then can be left as default. Elevation max 6, elevation max 10, P dot max 6. Just of course as well to activate the frequencies and the satellites that your receiver can get. If in doubt here, you can tick everything, and then what will happen is when you start a survey, it will disable the ones that your particular receiver cannot track or use. So I'm going to say accept here, and I'll leave a few extra tick just so you can see when we start the survey what happens. So accept, and now I go into base options. Same in base options, pick fast static. As soon as you do, the screen looks like this, and very similar more or less to the rover settings. You just pick the receiver, where you're going to measure to. In the case of the base, because you're going to be logging for a number of hours, I go into that in more detail in the Trimble Business Center processing video. Because you're going to be logging for a number of hours, it's more than likely that the base is going to be set up on a tripod, in which case you'll have to have the R10 extension piece, and it should be measured to here. Okay, again I'm going to leave antenna height blank and fill that in on site. My logging device again is the receiver, because I want to use my controller and take it away and get it to start my rover or my secondary stations once I'm finished starting data logging at my primary station. So again I'm going to go with a 5-second interval here, and again you can tick the constellations you require and the frequencies you require. It's not a big deal if you tick something you're not entitled to, as I say, because when you start the survey it'll stop. So accept that and then store, and that is your fast static survey style setup. Okay, so in this example what I'm going to do is I'm going to imagine that we're starting our primary station logging first. So I'm going to go to 3 bars, measure. One thing that just to know as well, in your settings in terms of your connections and your Bluetooth, make sure that you have whatever you're going to be used as your primary station, your base, maybe whichever one is logging is set up as your base, and then the one that you're using for your secondary station is set up as your rover in your Bluetooth settings. Okay, so 3 bars, measure, fast static, start base receiver. Okay, so it's connecting here to my R10-2. And you can see here that the survey style is incorrect, so it's picked up on that and it's going to automatically update it, which is good, and it's starting the fast static survey. So this might be my primary station, and in here then I can put my antenna height. So point does not exist, provide chords at processing time. Standard message you get with starting a fast static survey. And yes, because we're going to generate the actual coordinates for this. This is coming basically because the template, the survey in the template, we've picked no projection, no datum. But that's fine. We're going to log everything in latitude and longitude, ellipsoidal height, and then we'll process later. So point does not exist, provide chords at processing time, okay. Put in your antenna height, measured in this case up to the lever of R10 extension. Start base because it's on a tripod. Okay, base started. Okay, there's a number of ways you can tell that you're logging data at your base, because what you don't want to do is to start the base running and then go away and come back later on a couple hours later and find that you actually haven't been logging any data at all. Okay, so one way that you can tell is actually if you look at the head of the actual receiver itself, the power button should be flashing. Okay, now the power button normally doesn't flash unless it's running out of battery. If it was running out of battery, it'd flash quite quickly. Whereas if you look at the power battery when it's logging fast static data, it's a much slower and steadier pulse. Okay, so that's your first check that it's logging data. Another way, of course, is to hit your 3 bars, go to Instrument, go to Receiver Files, Import from Receiver. When you do, it shows you all the files that are on the in this case R10-2, okay, your base, in this case your primary receiver. You can see here that it is telling me that you started running a file on, in my case, today's date, just a minute or two ago. So I know, yes, something is happening. This I'm actually logging fast static data. I also has a lock here, padlock icon, which tells me that it's actually in process of running a file. If the T0 is the format for fast static files that you'll later import into Trimble Business Center. Okay, just as well in relation to the 019934140, if you were to look at the last 4 digits of the serial number of your receiver, in my case it is 0199, so those 4 digits, first 4 digits relate to the serial number, last 4 digits of your receiver. And 3140 means that it is the 314th day of the year, and the 0 means that this is the first fast static file or T0 file that you have logged on this day. Okay, so that is your 2 checks to know that you're logging data. Now you're happy and you can go away and you will start your primary station. So in my case, to start a primary station, I'd have to go to settings, connections and Bluetooth and swap these around. In the case of somebody in the field, you're going to have a different receiver here set as your rover, and then to start the secondary station, it's more or less just a repeat. 3 bars, measure, fast static, but this time you pick measure points. Okay, when you go into measure points, it will connect to your new receiver and start logging data. It will also store a T0 file. Again, you will do the same checks as previously by going to 3 bars, settings, instrument, and you will check in here receiver files, import from receiver, and check that is logging a file. You will also check that the battery is logging. Okay, to end your file, then at the end of the day, you just return to your receiver, 3 bars, measure, fast static, end GNSS base survey in this case. Ending survey, power down receiver, I'm going to say no. And what I can check this time is to get my files actually off the receiver. It's 3 bars, instrument, receiver files, import from receiver. You can see now that I've ended the fast static survey that the lock icon is gone. I can click on here, click import, start, and now I've successfully downloaded via Bluetooth from the receiver to the controller. That file should be stored in the Trimble data file on your controller. So if I bring over my Trimble data folder, so you will browse to your Trimble data folder in your controller, into your projects folder, and in your projects folder you will have a folder called fast static files that goes along with the job file. You won't need the job file, just so you know, for Trimble Business Center. It is in fact the T02 or the T0 file, depending on your receiver, that you require for Trimble Business Center. So that's how you set up, start and download your files for fast static data. If you have any other questions in relation to this, just contact Corex support, or if you require any of the fast static survey styles or templates, or need any other information. Okay, thank you.